Chapter 3. Post-war years in the Congo and adoption of Leopold. In 1947, after a 3-month vacation in the mother country where he had gone to see his family and get married, Paul Danola moved with his young bride into the newly built cottage intended initially as another annex to the guest house. Nothing was beautiful enough for his doe-eyed, hypersensitive Anne-Marie. He would shower her with costly presents imported from Europe and America. He bought her a BSA bicycle which she never used. She had 2 servants at her disposal and even a watchdog so that she would feel protected. But all this was to no avail. Anne-Marie suffered from la maladie des tropiques. She would shy away from people, and when addressed, she would be on the brink of tears. I felt quite sorry for her and endeavored to make her see life's shinier side. With Shikapa, I planted dahlias and rose bushes along the pathway leading to their veranda. But very soon her sketchy smile would vanish, and she would lapse into that state of torpor which had hit her the very first instant she set foot on African soil. She seemed to be caught in a ghostly grid, fearing everything and everyone. She was scared of staying alone with her 2 Congolese servants. She also avoided the German shepherd, which Paul finally had chained in the garage. But its barking, too, she couldn't bear. On top of it all, as a Fleming, she spoke French too scantily to socialize, let alone sustain a lengthy conversation. Anne-Marie lost 12 kilos during her first 3 months in the Congo. That delightful peasant plumpness she wore upon her arrival had melted away. Only her deep-set gray eyes seemed to be alive. They glowed feverishly. She was anemic, and the doctor told Paul she needed a change of air. It was my suggestion that they both go spend several weeks in South Africa and let me take care of the guest house. Cape Town's bracing climate did them a lot of good, for Paul too had been showing signs of mental fatigue. When they returned, Anne-Marie's tan covered a more fully fleshed body. She appeared to have completely recovered from her depression. Her cheeks were rosy, and she spoke with less restraint. She now showed pleasure in tending her garden. Anne-Marie openly enjoyed my company, asking for my advice or opinion. She was really going through a metamorphosis. To what extent I would soon discover with dismay. Anne-Marie was now concerned about my well-being and insisted that I share the evenings with Paul and her. It became embarrassing the way she would impose my presence upon her husband, often ignoring him. I noticed in Paul a growing malaise. At work he would become irritable and would yell at the natives. With me he remained courteous, but he would consult me less and less regarding the more important aspects of the business. Then things took a very swift turn. Earlier than usual one morning, Paul came to me, unshaven and hirsute. He had evidently spent a bad night. "I must have a word with you right now," he announced. "This has to stop between you and Anne-Marie," he flared up. "And you needn't pretend. She's told me about your advances and the rest." Regaining my composure, I cut him short. "What you're accusing me of is very serious, Paul." "You're darn right," he interjected. "I'm not one to flaunt my private life, but you should know that because of you, Anne-Marie won't allow me to touch her anymore. It's been going on for too long already." "All this is sheer fabrication, and I'm not going to have it," I retorted. "I only tried to be helpful to her, but not in the way you're implying." "Oh yes, you've just only slept with her several times." Unable to contain myself any longer, I grabbed him by the fist. "Have you both become raving mad? You know damn well I don't go with women. One never knows what to expect from pédales, fairies of your sort. After one of your sickening affairs, you suddenly turn your depraved instincts toward a female. No, not any female. You choose the weak ones like Anne-Marie, who fall prey to the schmaltzy talk you're so good at. No wonder she feels better. You've extended her lease under the tropics. I should have been wiser than to let you in on my business. That's what I get for being broad-minded. Goddamned homo." The day after the argument, I handed Paul my resignation, maintaining that he was dead wrong about my so-called relationship with Anne-Marie. For a while, I believed I ought to confront her in the presence of her husband and wrench the truth out of her, but then, considering her frail and highly emotional nature, I gave up on the whole idea. She would break down totally and turn into the wreck she had been before the South African parentheses. That is when I decided to set up shop, opening my luxury boutique. Unfortunately, our parting didn't augur well for Paul. Only 2 months had elapsed when he came to me, pleading that I should rethink the matter and resume my position at the guest house. I could even keep the boutique. He wouldn't ask me to buy the shares back. He had realized the mistake he had made and admitted he had misjudged me grossly. Anne-Marie was again driving him and herself crazy, but I stood adamant, painful as it was for Paul. Within weeks he sold the guest house, packed, and left the Congo with poor Anne-Marie. Not long after the Denola's departure, I was visited by a blonde woman in her 30s. She was elegantly dressed and wore her hair in a page boy cut. Having never seen her before, I assumed she was a customer from out of town. Great was my surprise once she revealed her identity. I'm Janine de Vries, Paul Denola's sister. My husband and I have just been transferred from Kilo Moto, where he was an engineer at the gold mines. He has now landed a contract with the Union Minière. I don't regret the 2 years in the interior, but it does feel wonderful to be in Elizabethville. Paul wrote us so much about you. What a shame Anne-Marie couldn't adapt herself to the Congo. It's Paul I'm worried about now, though. He truly loved this country. Oh well. I was immediately taken by Janine's charm and exuberance. She had sparkling eyes, a perennial smile at life. She was looking for something to do. Actually, she was a godsend. Business was promising and I needed an assistant. It happened so naturally that, before the day was out, I had engaged her. And I'm happy I heeded my intuition. I couldn't have found a more reliable person to second me. I don't know whether Paul had told her of my tendencies, but she accepted me straight away, and I didn't have to justify myself or make any sort of amends. Gossiping was a trait she seemed to have been born without, and this made me very grateful towards her. In an exquisitely feminine fashion, she was an epicure. Had my background and circumstances been different, I might have elected someone like her as a lifetime mate, but I was quite content with our relationship. Though somewhat distant, it could be attributed to shyness. Her husband, Roger, proved a decent and unmeddlesome human being. They formed a nice couple. The only shadow in Janine's life was that she couldn't have children. Her tears were generally of laughter except when it touched on that specific argument. God has struck me thus, she would lament, as he cripples others. I'm thankful for Roger, though. Another man would have felt vexed. I asked her whether they had ever considered adopting a child. She had, but Roger didn't want to hear about it. He thought the idea repulsive, and Janine, unwilling to hurt his manly pride, resigned herself to his decision. He may have been selfish on that count, but she couldn't honestly hold it against him. When she saw children, a frown would sweep away the joy that normally emanated from her eyes, and an awkward smile would settle on her lips. She always had candy in reserve or some plush toy for our customers' kids. The parents affectionately nicknamed her Madame Cadeau, Mrs. Gift. Her love for children was genuine enough to cross the racial barrier. She would stop a negress in the street with a babe tied to her back and stroke its cheek, saying, "La adorable poupon," a gesture which moved me infinitely, though at the time I couldn't really explain why, for I too had been brought up in a segregated environment, taking certain ugly things for granted. Janine's attitude toward black children triggered something in me that became irreversible, and yet, like the crushing majority of Europeans in the colony, she never socialized with the Congolese. Chikapa, who had been devoted to me ever since that first night of my arrival at the guest house, had a road accident that left his legs paralyzed. His loss affected me greatly. It was he who had sent me Mama Amalkia, a Nduku of his. He had spoken about her during one of my visits at the Cité Indigène, where he now lived permanently. "Bwana Harry," he told me, "in town there is no one better for you. She's worked in hotels and knows how to deal with muntu meupe. But she's not always very accommodating, though when she likes somebody, you can count on her with your eyes shut, kwele, and she's willing to enter your service." He paused for a few seconds, then added, "On a trial period. You see, Bwana, Mama Melkia is a very strong woman, and nguvu sana, and she, well, doesn't stand for any nonsense. That's why she always refused to work for white ladies." I was, I must admit, a bit surprised, but when I started chuckling, Chikapa guffawed, baring the lustrous white of his teeth. Though I had been forewarned, the encounter with Mama Malkia was certainly not banal, especially under these latitudes. Her presence was impressive, both physically and by the tone in which she addressed me. One might have thought the roles had been reversed and that it was I who was being hired. She posed the questions and requirements, and I was just allowed to take it or leave it, Monsieur, her leitmotif whenever she detected a doubt on my face. So before I could collect my thoughts, I took it all in stride, so to speak. Here again, intuition came to my rescue and proved a faithful ally. Not that everything went smoothly between Mama Malkia and me. I found her authoritarian, somewhat coarse in her manners, and nosy. She wouldn't call me Bwana, but Monsieur, and she had the nerve to remark that I wasn't a ladies' man. I didn't talk to her for a week. Then she came to me and things got much better. She remained pig-headed, answered back, even raised her voice at me. But in spite of it all, she was an exceptional character, and I couldn't hold any real grudge against her. My European acquaintances were utterly confounded. Some couldn't conceal their dismay upon learning that under my initiative, Mama Malkia had left the Cité Indigène to come and live with me. This was simply not done. I had discussed the matter with Janine, and her outlandish, but why not after all, had prompted me to make the move. Then, as the weeks rolled on, an idea germinated in me which gradually became an obsession. I could feel its tentacles invade my whole being to the point that I started having insomnia. Unable to keep it to myself, I approached Janine and poured it out to her. "You want to adopt Métis?" she repeated several times with amazement. It was too grave a question to act hastily upon. We talked it over for days until we reached the momentous conclusion. I say we because without Janine's empathic help, I could never have embarked on a decision of such magnitude. As for Mama Malkia, when I disclosed it to her, she believed I had lost a few screws and called me an outright Mazimu. She finally consented to this crazy and strange whim of mine, and I entrusted her with the delicate task of selecting the child at the Catholic mission, the adoption procedure being the easiest part of it. From now on, my life would take on a new meaning.